Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Banfield, and I am with Banfaith Sales Systems, and we're going to be doing a show today with some sales experts. Today, we're going to be talking about handling objections, some different techniques you can use to move a customer from their objection to the point where you can close them. So, sit back, enjoy, learn something. Thank you for coming. We'd like to ask if you're watching, whether you're watching on Facebook or watching on YouTube, that you give us a like and that you share our information, because we'd love to get this information out to as many people as we can. So today, my panel of experts, my industry guys that I lean on, that I look to, that are joining me, are these guys. We're going to start first with Alex. Alex, you want to give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, Alex there from Michigan. Got Michigan Dealer Service. Been working with dealerships for a long time, and I really look forward to getting some information out there on Listen Up. We're talking about closes. Looking forward to learning something today.
Thanks. Glad you could be here. We're going to go now to sunny Florida. Ron, you want to give us a brief intro of yourself?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Got some great closes. I was hoping to be able to show you them illustrated. Probably not going to be able to do that, so I'll do my best to explain them. But they're very valid closes. They're not the simplistic ones. They're a little complicated, but they're high-powered and they're full of energy.
Okay. Lastly, but not least, we have from up in Michigan also, Mr. Shinneberry. Mark, you want to do a brief intro?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Shinneberry. I've been in the car business a long time, participated in a lot of closes. A lot of them went very well and some not so well. So we're going to talk about mistakes that we've made in the past and how not to make them.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys. So when we talk about closing, that's all about asking for the order. All right, there was a video in training that I saw many years ago, and that was the name of the video, Ask for the Order. And basically the gist of the video was, if you don't get to the point where you ask for the business and you blatantly ask, nothing's going to happen. Customers are not going to fall in to your lap. They're not going to walk up and say, oh, all what you said makes sense, I want to buy. You have to ask them for the business. But to get to that point, you have to go through what we call objection handling to get to the close. And so there are types of ways to handle objections to allow you that lead to that closing question. And that's what we want to talk about today. Obviously, if you do a good enough job of presenting your product, of meeting their needs, of showing them why this is the perfect vehicle, the number of objections go down. But customers and consumers have been trained that they cannot say yes without presenting some type of objection. And so that's why we need to have these different techniques in our arsenal. So I want to start with, I think, a fairly easy one that you guys want to talk about. So I've got a list of objections here. We're going to work through these. And again, like Ron said, he's going to talk about some stuff that take a little more thought. Just because of technology today, we're not going to be able to actually put anything on the screen. But we'll take our time and we'll work through this and we'll get to it. But the first objection I want to talk about, and so I want my experts to talk about, is what is known as the assumptive close. So who wants to explain what the assumptive close and give us an example of what it sounds like?
You know, the assumptive close is just going through the purchase process, assuming the customer is going to be buying the car. They're there for a reason. They're going to be buying a car, and for me, you just assume that they're buying it from you.
So when you get okay, Alex. So when you get to the end of it and you've presented everything and all that, what does the assumptive close process sound like to the customer?
It's requesting them to take action. So what you do is you take your worksheet, you turn it towards the customer, and you tell the customer, if you'll give me your approval right here, we'll get your new car ready for delivery. So you assume the close.
Right. So right, direct to the point. and you just assume you don't hem haw, you don't ask any other questions other than sign here. You almost direct them to do it, right, Ron?
Well, I don't ever ask them to sign. Ask them to okay, approve, or authorize. So you show them the worksheet. I just need your approval, okay, authorization right here, and we'll get your new car ready for delivery. And then zip it and wait for them to take the next action.
Right. And a lot of times, if you've done your job right, they go ahead and pick up the pen and sign. They may look, they may think, but they'll end up signing. The problem with that process that Ron said, and Ron hit on it exactly, you have to wait them out, right? If you start talking too soon before they've done what you've told them to do, what happens?
You get more objections.
Right. You go back to the start almost. You gotta do your whole process all over again. So it's a great way to do it, but you really have to do the work up to that point. Correct?
I think it's important to note too is Ron's exactly right. Is you no matter what close you use, present the numbers and just stop talking. Let the customer process everything in their head. You talk yourself out of a sale. He who talks first loses. So present the numbers and just zip it, like he said. And really, that's just another step to find a reason the customer not objective the the reason the customer doesn't want to buy the car.
Right. Ron, you've got a pen in your hand?
You see this right here?
Yeah.
This is a closing instrument. And one of the things you need to do is realize when you say to the customer, Mr. Customer, please go ahead and okay this. They'll take your pen and put it down right where they've got to put their approval. Put a check mark. Put the pen down and say, I just need your approval right here, and we'll get your new car ready for delivery.
Yep.
Now, you got to use a check mark, not an X. How many? Because that's a close. How many of you use X's and not check marks?
Yeah. Well, the X can be someone's signature, so there are some ramifications of what you do at that point. So you're right, Ron.
The X came out of stupidity. Where'd the X come from? Here's a closing tool for you.
Yeah.
Came from people that were illiterate.
So I'd like to add to this a little bit.
Okay.
So if you want to use the assumptive close, I'm going to back up. It starts with a proper presentation and walk around of the vehicle. It all starts at the meet and greet when you ask the customer qualifying questions. And when I say qualifying questions, I'm not talking about credit. I'm talking about, Ron, is this car for you or another family member? Who's buying? Are you prepared to buy a car today? Are you here for service and you're just walking around the lot looking at cars killing time, and you're not going to buy for another 6 months or 6 years or whatever the case may be, right? Qualify who you're talking to, what their intention is, and they will tell you right up front, I'm looking for a car. Show them the car, ask them all the questions, find out what they want, provide them with what they want. Then when you get to the point where you're doing the assumptive close, it just happens because you put the pen in front of them. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. So I want to now take what I view as kind of a way to soften the assumptive close, or if you're not 100% sure the close is ready to happen. And what that's known as is something called the minor choice close. So to define the minor choice close, basically what that is you give the customer a couple of small options. And when it comes to this final close, the options would be, would you want to take the car with you now or pick it up tonight? Do you want to take delivery tomorrow or next day? Do you want your payment on the 30th or the 15th? Minor choices that if they answer them, they have in essence said, I've accepted the deal.
That's also known as an ascending close. You're collecting yeses till you get to the final question, and it's will you take it or will you take it?
Right. Alex, you're laughing as you're looking like the Bond villain You're muted there.
Sorry, I had a cat playing with
Yeah,
my
I was going to
microphone.
say you look like Blofeld from James Bond stroking his cat there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Ron's exactly right. The last question is, are you going to take it or are you going to take it? Or what time do you want to take it?
Right. Okay, Mark, any comments on minor choice?
I love it all. It's the, you know what? It's, as you very well know, Mark, you and I have conducted many seminars together along this line, right? Talking about closes and talking about objections and all that. We've all four of us have participated throughout our careers and hosted stuff like this in the past. We've all worked side by side with sales managers and salespeople, helping them. And of course, early on in our careers, we all were taught and learned how to do this on the front lines. And I try not to get caught up in all the different, the minor choice close, the ascending close. Everybody's got different names. As we were talking before the seminar started, everybody comes up with their own name for something, right? And everybody's reinventing the wheel, but it's all the basics. And most of us fall into a cadence of what works. Uh-oh.
You're back. Did you have a power outage here?
I've been having internet issues, so I thought I lost you guys for a second. So we all fall into a cadence in what we feel comfortable with and what really works. And I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole purpose of this discussion is just to get people, whether if you're experienced and you've been doing this a long time, just thinking outside the box and remembering things you may have learned years ago. And if you're new, helping you find that cadence and get into your groove.
Right.
And no, this is exciting. This
so that leads me to the next close that I'm going to bring up. And this close has been around for a long time. It's underused in some ways, but it's become too much of a cliche in another way. Okay. So it can be effective for the right person. And I think all of these, we need to make sure that we recognize that not any one of these closes is going to be one that you can use on every customer. Different customers work to different ways to doing it. But the close I want to bring up now has sometimes been called the Ben Franklin close. Sometimes it's called the pro-con. Sometimes it's called the T-square. Right? There are different ways to talk about this, but in essence, and it's called the Ben Franklin because some people have said that Ben Franklin used this process to make his decisions. I don't know if that's true or not. Honestly, I don't know. But basically what you do is you on a piece of paper, you draw a line, and on one side you start listing you list all the positives, right? It does this, it does this, it does this. On the other side, you get the negatives from the customer. You make them tell you what the negatives are. And then hopefully, or the plan is, the list of positives are greater than the list of negatives. You can then go to say, well, it looks like this sounds like a good deal for you. Why don't we go ahead and do it? You then jump into the assumptive close. You can use a minor choice close to go through the positives. Ron, you're kind of smiling at this. Go ahead and talk.
Yeah. Ben Franklin was a wise old guy. I wish I knew him because he has the same haircut as me. But these closes are Ben Franklin, whatever you want to call it, you've got to set it up. So, you look at the customer, you say, hey, Mike, it looks like you're having a difficult time making or reaching a resolution. I'd like to offer a suggestion. Let's go ahead and take a sheet of paper, divide it in half. Let's put all the reasons why you should take action on this side and all the reasons why you shouldn't on the other side. And then obviously you list everything out. When you get to the negative side, look at the customer and you say, okay, what reasons why you wouldn't take action? And then you just look at them and because the number one reason is going to be shkadol, money. So you say to it, looks like it's the price. Am I right? So what you're saying is you get your hinge working If I can make the price more agreeable, you'd be prepared to take action. Is that correct? Yes, it is. How close to this number would you do business? Why don't you go ahead and write that down? Again, you can use the language, but you got to set it up.
Right.
You
So,
got to
Starts
be
way at
very
the beginning.
you got to be
so
very
here's,
convicted.
here's a question. Are these closes that we're talking about and the more that are coming, are they meant to manipulate the customer?
No.
Why
Mark, you said that quick, or follow
No,
up on your
because that is the perception, right? With a lot of people out there that salespeople are trying to manipulate them. If you're a professional salesperson who is in this for the career, for the long haul, you don't want to manipulate anyone, because if you manipulate someone, they're not going to come back and buy another car from you. If you help them, they're going to come back and buy another car from you. If they go away and they feel like they've been manipulated, what do you have?
These are called justificational approaches. And if you don't justify it, I go back to something I said weeks and weeks ago. Timid salespeople have skinny kids. Be bold.
right.
Be bold.
So
Don't be rude or nasty, but be bold.
right. So I want to come back to this. I'm going to say something now that we're going to come back to at the end. So when you look at behavioral studies, and DISC is one of the big ones, Myers-Briggs, they categorize people into certain areas. And I want to come back to the prototype. There's 4 prototypical customers as far as how they do things. And I want to come back to those customers and which of these approaches work best for that type of personality. Okay? So we're going to come back to that. So here's the deal. So we're done with Ben Franklin, so make Ben go away. So Ron, I want you to talk about one of the proposals that you came up with. So let's talk about, because I think this one we can cover talking about decently, reduce to the ridiculous. What do you mean by that close? How do you do that?
You're going to reach a point in negotiations where, let's say that you get down to your number, and from where they want to be and you are is $1,000. And they don't want to come up and you ain't going down, and you're sitting there, you're at a stalemate. Mr. Customer, what you've got is $1,000 difference. So what you're telling me is for $1,000, you're going to go ahead and forego getting the car that you deserve and are entitled to. Is that correct? And he said, well, yeah. And you plan on owning this car for 5 years. Is that correct, sir? Yes. So what you're really talking about is $200 a year. Am I right? So for $200 a year, you're going to compromise what you really want, maybe go with something you don't want, buy it, and 6 months later going, I should have bought what I wanted. Well, yeah, okay. We're talking about $16.67 a month. You can't go out and have a decent lunch for $16. What you're telling me is a lunch is going to separate you from this car? Yeah, it's going to. Okay, so in essence, sir, what it really is 55 cents a day. For 50, how close to 55 cents would you go? Would you do 45 cents? The customer kind of giggles like you just did. Would you do 45 cents? What do you mean? Well, what would you do? I'll do 35. Would you do 40? All right, I'll do 40. Take it and multiply it out and see how much of the $1,000 you have based on 40 cents a day for 5 years. All of a sudden, you got $600 or $700 of that $1,000 you were trying to get, and it's more palatable to them. So you reduce the amount to the smallest possible amount, and you question them. They can swallow 55 cents easier than $1,000.
Okay.
And they laugh.
So I'm sorry, Ron, I was distracted for a moment. Did you mention a cup of coffee during that talk?
Well, I said 55 cents. Could be a
Okay.
cup of coffee, could be a small soda, whatever it may be.
So is that
if you can buy a cup of coffee for 55 cents today, I definitely want to know where that's at.
well, that's for the old people at McDonald's. They have that senior citizen discount.
But you get the point.
Yes, I get the point. But my point, the reason I brought that question up, guys, I want you to answer this. The whole cup of coffee thing, is that too much of a cliche to use in today's world?
I think it depends on your audience,
Yeah.
who you're talking to.
Okay.
I mean, if the guy's sitting there drinking a cup of coffee with you at your desk, why not?
I've heard people use, a pack of cigarettes, right? Talking about a car, because that's a little more, right? So it's a pack of cigarettes a day, a pack of cigarettes a week. You see a guy smoking, talk about that. And you
I
guys,
love that close. I've used that close so many times. It's so conversational and it gets in deep with the customer, and that's what I love about it. It's
so
not.
my question is though, have you ever had people push back on it saying, I'm not giving up my cigarettes even to buy a car?
No.
Of course.
'Cause I've run into that.
I mean, it all depends on how the conference. I have people where I couldn't close using it. I tried, but let's face it. If we're really talking about objections, you have to get to the core. What's the real objection, right? Did you? And I promise you, if you get to this point, and you're having this conversation, and then you get down to it, and they say no, you probably missed something in the presentation early on.
You're on the wrong car.
On the car.
Yeah. All these closes are a way to identify a customer's objection. And you gotta start out the beginning of the process, introduction, presentation, and go through that process appropriately.
You guys remember the Kirby vacuum?
Yeah.
I have two of them, Ron.
The Kirby vacuum, they built a close into the vacuum. In the arm of the vacuum, there was a slot. You could put change in it. The Kirby guy came around once a month to collect the payment. They're saying, now you use your vacuum, your home is cleaner, you're getting exercise, you're taking 25 cents you would have spent on cigarettes, putting it in the handle of the vacuum, and when the Kirby guy comes around, take the handle off, pull the plug, or the plug, and there's your payment.
Interesting. I did not know that, Ron. Thank you for that. All right, so Ron, we're going to turn to you one more time for you had another close that you call this the total cost proposal. So how is this different from reducing to the ridiculous, or how does this work?
Well, the total cost proposal ends up at a reduced to ridiculous. So it's a combination. So you're starting out with, what do you pay for the car? Let's say the car is, $20,000. Well, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and, was there any kind of negotiated discount? Well, yeah, we had $1,000. So you got 20 minus 1,000. Now you got 19,000. Then you're going to go into things such as fuel economy. You're driving a car now that's getting 6 miles to a gallon. This is going to get 16. So your fuel economy comes off that. Now you reduce that number down even lower. So what you're doing is you're constantly chopping away at the number, and it's going to show them what is the total cost of this car at the bottom line. Your car minus your trade, minus your fuel savings, minus your residual value. This is what your net investment's going to be, because every car has value at the end of the lease. So you're going to drive this car, you're going to pay $300 a month, and you're going to put $150 in a forced savings. At the end of the term, that forced savings comes back to you.
So can you use that type of proposal on a non-lease?
You could.
You talked about residual and lease. I just want to make sure we understand that we can do this on a straight up buy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you want to elaborate a little bit on that, Alex?
You just don't reduce the residual out of the breakdown of the numbers.
But what can you do instead?
Well, that's the portion of the car you're not paying for.
Yeah,
Right.
you're
But
comparing it to the new
on a-
car to the old car.
So if you're going to reduce your total ownership cost, is how you talk about it with a non-lease, you can still talk about the future value, the estimated value of the car when you're done with it. How long do you now have to talk about how long do you anticipate keeping the car? what is your buying cycle, and what kind of value can we anticipate on the car then. Can't call it a residual, but it's the same concept, can we not?
Yep. And I'll tell you, you got to get in the habit of writing these things down. Put a piece of paper down, write it down. 20,000 minus negotiated discount, minus fuel savings, minus residual. Take that last number, divide it by years, weeks, months, and days. So you've got to write it down. Get in the habit of using a pen. And when you're done, a check mark. Needs your approval right here. And we're going to get that car ready for delivery.
Right. To elaborate on Ron's point, here's a little psychological fact, piece of information for all of you out there watching, all of you listening, that you may not know. And here it is. Customers will believe more readily, to a larger extent, things that they see written down, even if you wrote it down. So it doesn't matter who put it in writing. You could have written it down right in front of them, but they buy into it better if it's on that piece of paper and not just the air. So Ron's point is exactly right. Write the stuff down in front of the customer. They see you writing it, but it's more true, as it were, when they see it on that piece of paper.
Maybe down the road, us as a group could think about doing a workshop in the Michigan area. And the four of us are presenters. And we sell a ticket. We go around to dealerships and we do these things live. It's like, I think that we blow people away.
Right. Mark, You've been quiet for a little bit. Time for you to talk.
What'd you say, me?
Yeah, you. Yeah.
Oh, I was actually saying something when you said my name. I'm like, what? Who's he talking to? So, we're talking about all these different closes, but I see our title up there is Objection Handling. So I'm just going to throw this out there. The first thing you want to do when you think you have an objection is restate that question that the customer posed to you back to them.
In the form of a question, right?
Yes, because often when the customer throws something out there that right away we as salespeople, we jump to the conclusion that, oh, it's an objection, I have to overcome it. Well, often it's not. It's just a question. They're just clarifying. They're asking a question. So when you ask it back to them in the form of a question, a lot of times they'll say, yeah, that's exactly what I said. Or sometimes it'll sound as stupid to them as it did to you when they asked it.
You say something like, so if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is.
Yes, that's absolutely right, Ron.
And restate it in the form of a question.
So what I'm hearing is sometimes you restating it to the customer gets past their objection.
Yes, because often, not just sometimes, but often, it's not actually an objection. It was just a question.
Are you saying that customers will blow smoke to try to get you off track, hoping that you'll stop selling?
They don't do that. No.
And again, I said this earlier, I said this at the beginning, customers have been trained through the years to object.
We trained them.
We trained them to do that. We did over the years. We did. But we now have to deal with it. So even if they're all in, they want to buy, they're not going to just walk in and say, I want that car, here's my money, take it. They're going to make us go through a process, right?
That's absolutely right. I will tell you, I can't even begin to count the number of customers that told me they had to sleep on it because they just had to sleep on it. And when I continued the discussions and just didn't stop with that and actually had a discussion about it, ultimately it came out that the only reason they were saying is because they heard that was what you were supposed to do. You should make a decision right now. It wasn't based on any reasoning that they had. It was just what they heard or someone told them this was the best approach. They really wanted that car today because ultimately they took the car.
Let me ask you this. If you have a good enough relationship with a customer, could you pull a pillow out of your desk at that point in time?
You ever get the religious close?
Yeah. Okay, Ron, we're going to be careful. We're not going to go there. So, yeah.
No, it's nothing wrong. It's good.
Okay, go ahead. I got to
A
make
lot
sure
of
we don't get
people now,
banned.
we don't really make a decision until we go home and pray on it. And I said, I respect that. I really do. But let me ask you a question. Do you think the Lord led you here by mistake?
So, yeah, or I've had I've seen salespeople say, okay, let's pray right now. I'll pray with you. Is that a danger spot, though? Is that something you have to be really careful about with a customer?
Just look up, make sure there's no lightning bolt.
Well, could you
It's
offend
all
a customer if it came across wrong? Could it come
Sure,
across
sure
wrong?
you could.
Of
Sure.
course.
It's all
Anything
about building
to
a
say.
rapport at the beginning of the process with the customer. Repeat referral business and a long-term approach to customers.
It all starts at the beginning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one quick thing, and then before we wrap up, we're about at the end. I talked about earlier the personality. So there are 4 types of personalities, basically. What we call the bold or the dominant, the direct people. You have the expressive people that are very friendly and relationship-driven, fast-paced. You have the people that are built on statistics, that need data points, and then you have people that are just not the relationship built, but they hold back, so they protect themselves. So which of these closes do you think would be the best one to give that quick-paced, dominant, get-to-the-point customer?
Extrovert.
Not just an extrovert, but very much to the point. The dominant, the bold. Which assumptive? I just said it. Which close should we use? The assumptive close, right? Get right to the point. Ask the closing question. Don't play around with it because they want to get to the point. They don't want you messing around. They don't want to hear all of this nonsense. Just ask me a question. So what about the customer that is the one that needs all of the data, that needs to process all of these different pieces of info? Which one of those closes would work best for them?
The total cost proposal that Ron had.
Total cost would work. What about the Ben Franklin? Would that work for them?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah, because again, you're listing that information.
I just wanted to say, in our previous discussions, Ron talked about not liking the Ben Franklin close, and I have to say it's not one of my favorites either. However, I will, to be totally candid, I've used it many times.
I've used it.
And it's worked, right? It works in certain scenarios. It's not my favorite, but it works.
Right. So that tentative, timid, that person that holds back, what about the minor choice close for them to actually build to the close? Would that work for them potentially?
Yeah, the minor choice is another thing that goes through the whole. You got to start at the beginning and get your 75 yeses in 75 minutes with your customer, and small mental ownership.
Right.
Mental pictures of ownership for the customer.
Well, the average sale takes 5 attempts to close.
Yeah.
The average salesperson closes once.
Right.
And the number one close in America today is, well, what do you think?
What do you think?
I want to go home and think about it.
Yeah, so that relationship person, that very high extrovert, as Ron was saying, someone like me, fast paced, but I'm friendly. I want to be friends with everybody. What do you do with that person? Is it so if you give that person the Ben Franklin, or you start asking too many questions, what's going to happen with that person?
You give them the mattress close.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be more. You got to guide them and not let them get off track. And the total cost, I think, would work for that one. The reduce to the ridiculous, but not too many steps, because you'll lose them, because they'll start going off they'll start seeing shiny objects and go off. So stay focused with that. Okay, guys, this has been great today. I really appreciate your input on this. We'll do more along these lines moving forward. But now it's time for the soapbox moment. So I'm going to give you a moment to say whatever you want about whatever you want. And I'm going to start with where I started earlier. Alex, you're up first.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to close customers and get that vehicle over the curb. I think the single most important thing is to listen, and just when you present numbers, just be quiet and let them think about it. Don't overtalk. Listen to the customer.
Okay. Mark, we'll put you up next.
So I'm just going to say this. Do a great presentation. Do a great walk around. Listen to your customer. Provide them with the vehicle that they asked for, that they were looking for. Show them the way. And then ask for the sale. And as Alex said, shut up. Ask for the sale and shut up. And let the customer answer.
I agree.
All right, Ron, your turn.
Yeah, when the customer says no, ask them why. When the customer says yes, ask them to buy. Give them the pen.
Oh, very nice.
I love it.
Ron. Man, you've been doing this, you've done this before, haven't you, Ron?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go
Hey,
next.
we got to think about holding a seminar. I'll come to Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I'll do the same thing. So again, to recap everyone, don't give up on your close. Customers are going to push back because we've trained them to do it. But if they're there for a reason. So go through your job, do the product presentation, listen to what they tell you, ask questions, find out what their needs are, what their universe is all about, what are they looking for. And then Mark mentioned it, Ron mentioned it, there was a guy by the name of Joe Girardi made a video called Ask for the Order, and hit the two main points that, if you get nothing else from today, take these two main points away. If you're going to ask for the order, if you're going to sell something, you have to ask for the order, and then you want to shut up, because the first person that speaks after you ask for the order is going to, Joe called it lose, but basically you're either going to get the order, or if you start talking first, you're going to let the customer off the hook, and you're going to have to start the process over. So pay attention to those things. So that's our webinar for today. We will be back next week, next Thursday at noon. I'm changing stuff up here. So I want to make sure you guys see this information here. Here's our team. If you have any questions, you can contact us at the information on the screen. Mike wasn't able to be with us today. He'll be back next week. But please join us. Tell your friends. Learn something. And this is Listen Up. We're talking about something to help you sell better. So thank you very much for attending. We'll see you next Thursday. Ta-ta.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.